Mr. Kip Sorensen, good to see you, man.
Good to see you.
I'm excited about the upgrade in your studio. I mean, you just continue to look better and better. Actually, it's not that you are looking better; it's that your backdrop looks better, which is just making you better by default.
That's why I married my wife, so I just look better by default just by hanging around her.
Yeah, because most of the time, if they were just to look at her, they wouldn't even recognize or see you. So I think that's the best strategy we can employ for sure.
Yeah, I may not I want to admit this, but it's not uncommon that I'm referred as Asia's husband. So
Yes,
that's
yes.
that's how large her shadow is that overcasts who I am as an individual, my self-worth.
Well, actually, I don't know if you knew this or not, but your new nickname is actually Asia's husband. So that's what guys are going to be knowing you by on the podcast from now on. And your alter ego. Did you see what your alter ego is now? No. Did you see what your alter ego is now?
I'm trying. I think
we talked about this last week. Chip Jorgensen.
Jorgensen. Yeah.
So
Chip
you're either
Jorgensen.
Asia's husband or you're Chip. One of the two.
Oh man.
All right, man. Here's what I'm
Mitchler.
thinking. Yeah, we're a couple of minutes into this thing already, and I listened to last week's podcast mostly because I like the sound of my own voice. And I realized we went for like 25 minutes before we even answered a question. So let's just jump into the questions this week, and we'll hash through as many as we possibly can.
Yeah, progress. All right, let's
Yes,
do it.
we're getting better, guys. Bear with us.
All right. Our initial group of questions are from the Iron Council. To learn more, orderofman.com/Iron Council. Grant Grinswig, have you done any podcast episodes on rucking in the past? Also, give us an update on Order of Man hats and shirts. So just kind of I kept this one in here because I want to give updates of swag for everybody.
You just want to sell more merchandise, which I can appreciate. You know, I can definitely appreciate that. Hey, let me say one actual thing before we get into this question. We are going to do a better job of ensuring that we're filtering the questions, because we're getting so many questions at this point, we just can't possibly answer all of them. So we're just pulling out the best ones. So Grant, I think his name is, congratulations. You made the cut, mostly because you gave us an opportunity to sell something. Outside of that, your question probably would have been declined. All right. What was the first part of the question?
Actually, can I be all honest here? I actually had Grant's question grayed out, and then I started reading it. I was like, wait a second. I meant to skip this question. Grant just wants to know about shirts. Yes, there's shirts, there's hats. Go to the store. Moving on.
Yeah,
Sorry.
go to the store. It's store.orderofman.com. And we've got, I don't have an Order of Man shirt on today. You do. So there's one of the good looking shirts. I've got an Order of Man hat on. We've got a new Iron Sharpens Iron shirt that will be available in 2 or 3 days. And also we have the kids battle planner that is now available as well. There was another part to Grant's question, though, that I actually didn't want to answer. What was it?
Any episodes planned around
Yes. Stay tuned. Jason McCarthy, the founder and owner of GoRuck, he's actually joined us in the past. He just wrote a new book called, I believe it's called How Not to Build a Backpack Company or something like that. Anyways, I'm interviewing him tomorrow, so the podcast will be available in a couple of weeks. Obviously, GoRuck, huge rucking organization. We're going to talk a lot about that, so stay tuned. All right, let's move on.
And he was on the podcast already. Ryan?
He was. It was probably a couple of years ago when I
okay.
sucked at this. So just don't listen to it. Just wait 2 weeks, and it'll be better than it was 2 years ago.
The new app.
That's right.
All right, copy. All right, Dan Harrison. Why is a personal code of conduct so important? If a man does not have a code, what is your recommended process for making one? And I thought this was, if you don't mind me kind of grouping two questions together. Aaron Goetz, I'm reading 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Stephen Covey, the author, discusses creating your own personal mission statement. Do either of you have a personal mission statement? If so, how often do you revise it, and et cetera? So very similar questions. Might as well tackle two with one response here.
Yeah, I think a code of conduct and or a mission statement is very, very important, because when you get in the heat of the moment, if you don't already know how you're going to act, it's going to be very easy for you to make a dumb decision based on either A, your emotions, or B, your dick. So having a code of conduct will allow you to make the right decisions based on a principled, level-headed approach before you get into the quote-unquote heat of battle. Whether that's being tempted by your cute secretary or compromising your morals or principles to make a sale, to make a little bit more money. If you have a code of conduct, it's going to keep you on path. It's going to keep you on track prior to getting into the heat of the moment. And that is very, very important. Because I'll tell you, I hear from guys who step out on their wives, and I've said it before. These guys say, oh, I just lost myself, or I got lost or caught up in the moment. Right. Because you didn't make the decision beforehand. And here's the other thing about making these decisions beforehand. If you have this code of conduct or a mission statement in place, you are less likely to get yourself in these weird, awkward, uncomfortable, and potentially dangerous circumstances because you make the right decisions leading up to the potential event. So guys, I know this isn't sexy. I know this isn't glamorous. I know it's going to take time and energy, but I promise you, if you want to maintain your course of action, if you want to do what's right, if you want to have the actions that are going to produce the best possible results for you, you will begin to think about it up front and ahead of time. Over your left shoulder, Kip, I see Sovereignty, the battle for the hearts and minds of men. Maybe it's your right shoulder. I don't know if it's mirroring or what, but it's over your shoulder.
Yeah, good point.
Which one is it, left or right? I got to know now.
I don't know. I mean, it's over my left, but okay, I don't know if it gets mirrored. That's how it's looking to me
too. That's how it's looking to me too. So okay. It's over Kip's left shoulder. In there's so he asked, how do you do this? You buy the book, okay? It's like whatever it is, $8 or $9 on Audible, maybe $15 to $20 to buy the book. Get the book in, I want to say it's the third section of the book. It will walk you through how to create your own code of conduct so that you know exactly what you're going to do, how you're going to behave, what principles drive you, what virtues you want to espouse, and how you want to live your life before you make a dumb decision or do something stupid.
Yeah. I can't help but it's funny. We set goals, right? Everyone's all about goals. We will succeed in a particular way financially or to have fitness goals or whatever. But where's the goal for how you choose to show up in life? Like, where's the goal of like what kind of man you are? We skip that part. And in the grand scheme of things, what ultimately matters? Your circumstances and the outcome, or how you showed up regardless of your circumstances. Right. That's ultimately what defines you as a man. But yet we never, by default, we're not intentional about that. We're intentional about the outcomes. We're not intentional about how we show up. And that's kind of how I see a code of conduct and mission. It is how you plan to show up, which ultimately defines the kind of man you are.
You know, it really reminds me as you're talking about this of Marcus Aurelius' quote, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one. And I bring that up because you need to understand that at its foundational level. Like once you figure out the foundational elements of how you operate your life, everything else will fall in line. You'll start to make more money. You'll attract better, more high caliber women. You'll connect deeper with your kids and your wife and the people that matter to you. Like everything else will fall into place if you get the foundation right. If you don't get the foundation right, you actually might still win at certain elements of your life. I see highly, highly successful businessmen who, like I said, very successful in the business front and are absolutely miserable on the home front. All right, these are guys that have figured out not the foundational level of who they are as men, but how to sell or how to run a business. That's valuable stuff. But if you don't have the foundation figured out, you can never be that well-rounded, all-encompassing man that you're trying to be. So build the foundation first. When you're building a new home or a multi-million-dollar business project, what do? You pour the foundation first. And even before that, you test the dirt, you test the soil. If there's any sort of clay, you're probably going to nix it or you're going to do something to shore up that foundation. But it's always the foundation. You don't start building the walls or putting the roof on or the windows in or doing the finish work before you build the foundation. That would be ridiculous. And yet we do that all the time in our lives. It's like, oh, just go. I'm just going to work out. I just want to work out. Well, why are you working out? I don't know. I'm just going to work out. I'm just going to do this project. Why is that important to you? I don't know. Somebody told me I'm supposed to do that. Whoa. Wait. Like you're putting the cart before the horse. All right. Get the foundation figured out. It's going to take you some time and a lot of energy, and it's not a one and done type thing. But once you start getting that stuff dialed in, all the pieces almost miraculously start to fall into place. I say almost because it's not a miracle. It's just the way it works.
Yeah. I can't remember if you covered this in Sovereignty, Ryan, but one of Aaron's was like, how often are you revising this?
Every day. I mean, I'm legitimately.
Yeah, if you're reading it and you're like, I need to adjust this. Yeah.
Right. I'm legitimately looking. I've got posters and all kinds of things that remind me of how I want. My code of conduct is right there staring in front of me. I got another one that my boys and I created right here. I got Theodore Roosevelt's Man in the Arena. I've got a poem that my son wrote right there. I've got different images and pictures and little things that remind me of how I want to operate. And so I'm looking at these things and being reminded every day, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, yeah, I still want to do that. Or, that's not as relevant as it once was. And so maybe I need to tweak that. But yeah, if you're not looking at it every day, I mean, how are you going to stick to it? Like the draws from, and I've called it the doctrine of popular culture. This is a degenerate society that we live in. We're tempted with money and women and sex and drugs and all the things that sedate us. It's a degenerate society that we live in. And if we're not inundated, just as much as we are with sexy ads and pornography and drugs and alcohol and other, if we're not inundated with the things that keep us on the right path, it will be very easy, especially for my personality. Guys, I tend to be very, very obsessive, compulsive. I get addicted very quickly. And I can channel that towards the right outlets, or I can channel that towards the wrong outlets. And by default, the doctrine of popular culture is telling me to get addicted to the wrong things. And so I have to, I don't want to say shelter, but I have to secure myself, arm myself against the doctrine of popular culture by having these little reminders, poems and writings and pictures and images and items that keep me on the right path. And then being around the right men and having, the systems in place of my battle planner, because it is very easy for a personality like mine to go off the rails. It's funny. I was listening to Joe Rogan, really enjoy his podcast. And I was listening to one that normally I wouldn't listen to, is with Rob Lowe. And it's really good. I'm listening to it right now. And Rob Lowe said he stopped drinking alcohol 30 years ago. And Joe Rogan was like, well, that must take a lot of discipline. He's like, no, actually it doesn't. He's like, I just know it would take more discipline for me to dabble in drinking, because he knows that if he were to drink a little bit, then it's like, okay, now what's next? And you get into drugs and you get the hardcore stuff. So he's like, I just abstain from it altogether. So it actually has little to do with discipline and more to do with just avoidance altogether. And that's how I look at my life. Like, stay away from that. It's not going to take you down the right path. Focus over here, inoculate yourself with these other little things that keep you on track. And it's worked for me. So I think it'll work for a lot of guys.
Totally. At one point, we should have the conversation around the personality types and drug addictions. There's actually studies that like certain drugs are more appealing to certain personality types. It's not just like a blanketed addiction. It's really interesting. Like, I know without a doubt,
that is interesting.
Like speed would be
Totally.
would be a problem for me. Yeah.
Yep.
Like with
something that would hype you up.
Like marijuana, marijuana does not appeal to me at all. Like it just, I don't even think it would work for me.
Have you ever smoked marijuana or had an edible or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
It just doesn't, like, it doesn't even appeal to me. I watch movies like Limitless and I'm like, damn, I want some of that.
I want that. I'm with you, because I've tried. When I was younger, I smoked some marijuana. I smoked some pot, things like that. In the not too distant past, I tried an edible because I'm like, well, okay, let's try it. Let's see, And I tried it.
Yeah.
I hate it, man. I hate it. Like, some people are like, oh, this is awesome. Everything's casual. And I'm like, I don't want to be relaxed. I want to destroy everything, and I want to have the energy and speed to be able to do it. So these depressors, these downers, no sir. I want something that's going to hot me up and make me more productive. So I'm with you on that for sure.
Yeah. I've taken high, what's the typical like high painkillers? Is it like Oxycontin or
Oh
whatever?
yeah, I stay away from that
I
stuff, man.
can't
Like I don't
stand.
mess with that stuff.
I'd rather feel the pain. I'd rather feel the pain because it just clogs my head, and I just feel disoriented. I'm like, I don't know. It just makes me feel worse. Like I'd
I
rather
like
just
the
take on the
pain.
pain than like numb it and be disoriented.
Are
Yeah.
you one of those guys who like likes the pain a little? I am. I like the pain. It makes me think that okay, I did something and this is a result of me actually using my body. So I like it, barring something that's like debilitating, you know.
Yeah. How's this? When I'm training and someone catches my face and it scrapes me, or I get like we accidental headbutt, I almost like want to headbutt again. I know
I'm
that
with you,
sounds
man.
weird,
No,
but
it
I'm kind of
doesn't.
like,
To me it doesn't.
yeah. And then I'm just like punch me. Like I want to ask for some punches all of a sudden. It's kind of weird.
So I was rolling with Brian Littlefield. He's a co-owner with Origin. So I was rolling with him the other day, and he's a brown belt, very good, very hard to like do anything with. He's just really good.
Yeah.
And I can't remember exactly how he had me, but he like stuck his knuckles into my ribs, and he was like, and after we stopped, you know, and whatever, and he's like, that was a little bit of dirty jujitsu. I'm sorry. I'm like, you know, I actually kind of like it. Like I actually like, go ahead, stick your forearm in my forehead or my cheekbone, dig your knuckles into my ribs. I'm like, that's the game I like. I have no problem you being a little dirty. It's awesome because I'm gonna do it back to you. So I can hold my own, and I like dirty jujitsu, man. It's no problem.
Yeah. Sounds like a good t-shirt in the future. Dirty
Dirty
jiu-jitsu.
jujitsu sounds nasty, man.
Yeah. Well, and John Gilliland actually had a question today. He's like, is it normal to have bruised ribs and chest pain while training? And I don't know about you, but I don't think I've had more injuries than rib related. It
Yeah,
happens all
I've
the
got one
time.
I'm dealing with right
I
now. In
popped
fact,
ribs, cracked ribs, bruised
Yep.
ribs all the time. So
Yeah, we have a chiropractor that we use, and he makes house calls. Which is awesome. Like he just comes to our place. In fact, he came this morning.
that is cool.
And so I trained this morning, and then I got home. An hour later, the chiropractor came over, and he worked me out. He's like, "Are you dealing with anything? What's going on?" I said, "I'm just dealing with a little bit of rib issue on my back." And he's like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "Let me feel." And so he spent some time feeling, and he's like, "Yeah, it's not bad, but yeah, you got some rib issues." So I think that's pretty normal.
Yeah. Yeah. Super normal.
In
The
fact,
worst
you know
is
what? I'll
a
tell you
popped
one
rib.
thing I was doing
That's the worst.
that I bet I haven't had that fortunately, but I was training last week, and I've got a fellow blue belt. He's probably been a blue belt for a year or two now, so he's probably getting close to his next advancement. And he's just big and he's solid and he loves the pressure game, so he knows how to use it really, really well. And I told him, I'm like, look, I got a rib problem. Just take it easy on this side. And so he passed my guard twice while we were rolling. And I said, okay, just stop. Just come over to this other side. And so I said, you can still take side control. That's fine. Just do it on this side. So we stopped and he switched. And then I'm like, okay, go. And we did that twice because I'm like, I can't have you on this side because my rib just hurts. If you just let people know, like they're respectful of it and you can work through it, just don't be stupid. Like try to like fight through it. Just you guys it's cooperation. It's not competition. So cooperate with each other and help each other out.
Yeah. And it's amazing how those rib injuries have helped me learn how to protect my ribs.
Totally.
Where before I would just train. Now it's like big guy coming. I'm like flexing my core. I'm keeping it flexed the entire time in preparation of like pressure, and it's funny. You don't think about that stuff until you get a couple cracked ribs and all of a sudden you're like, okay, I don't want to do that again.
Yeah. You don't want that to happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Primate ball. One thing I truly struggle with is talking about order of man outside my close, trusted friends. I have a lot of very liberal, progressive friends. I'm fairly liberal myself, and I know if I start talking about a men's group to them, I'm going to get into a ton of discussions and heated arguments and get upset for no reason, which leads me to being in a bad mood. I do wear shirts and caps, appreciate that. But when some of my friends ask about that or my favorite podcast, I'm very hesitant to share the message. I do want to share it, but I don't want to get into debates. So my question is, what are some good ways to talk about these things to people who might not be accepting of it without getting me upset about it?
I wouldn't. I mean,
Just
I
don't
wouldn't.
even worry about it.
Yeah, look,
Yeah.
you've got to decide if these people are open and receptive and there's some differences of opinion, that's one thing. But if these individuals are like hardcore lefties and they don't believe in personal accountability and responsibility, like what are you possibly going to share with them that's going to I mean, that's at the core, isn't that what we talk about? Personal
Yeah.
accountability and responsibility. That's at the core. If
Yeah.
people don't believe in that, and lefties don't believe in that, not liberals, okay, lefties, they don't believe in that. They believe in big brother, big sister coming in to rescue them, to save them, big government, help us out, rescue us from our own decisions because we can't possibly do it on our own. That's what lefties believe at their core. That's what they believe. And that's why it's all about big government and somebody else coming to rescue and keep us protected from these oppressors that we've made up in our mind, or ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So look, you've got to decide on where on that spectrum do they fall. Do they think that, like they don't believe in personal accountability and responsibility at all? And in that case, just have some drinks with them and just enjoy being present with them. If I can't even imagine hanging out with people like that, but let's say you're hanging out with people like that, just whatever. For whatever reason, maybe you're a glutton for punishment, whatever. Just do that without bringing up order of man. If they question it, like if it's genuine and honest and sincere questions, like, oh, order of men, what's that? Or, hey, I know you're in like a men's group. What is it that you do? Talk about the principles. Oh, we're an accountability group, so I'm just trying to improve myself, and other guys are trying to improve themselves, and we've just made an agreement that we're going to hold each other accountable to doing it. And then I listened to the podcast, and Ryan interviews incredible men, guys like authors and scholars and warriors, New York Times bestselling authors, professional athletes, to try to get some of their wisdom and distill it down in a way that we can apply it in our own lives. I think there's very few people on the planet who wouldn't see the value in that.
Yep.
So now, look, my case is different. I like to be polarizing, and I don't mind if somebody's pissed off, and if I can piss off the right people, I'm all about it. But I realize 80 to 90% of people don't want to do that, and so don't do that. Just talk about the principles. If they're open and receptive to it, if they're not, just have a drink, watch a movie, play a game, have a dinner, whatever it is you're doing. Order of man doesn't even need to get brought up.
Yeah. I think the example that we use of speaking with children, and I'm not belittling his friends, but we adjust the message, right? Like I could talk really technical with certain people and I can go really high level with other individuals. I can explain a basic principle to a child where I might deep dive into someone else. If I know someone is maybe a little more left than I, and they say what's going on, I'm going to simplify it and go straight to the principle. It's a group of men that I'm a part of. We help hold each other accountable to become better men. Period. Right. And then if there's a bigger interest and we want to talk about it, awesome. Then we can deep dive. But your audience, adjust your message a little bit so they can understand it. But I want to get into it all the time either.
Yeah, I mean, there's conversations that I just won't have, for example, with my sister. Like flat out, I just won't have those conversations. And we have a great relationship. We have conversations. We can talk about a lot of different things. And there's like 3% of the conversations that we just can't have. And we don't have them because you know what? I don't care. I don't care.
You're not in the business of changing her mind. Yeah.
No, I'm not. And, and if I had expectations of her and she had expectations of me, then maybe we'd feel like we're forced to have those conversations. I don't care. Like if you see it different than me, cool. Then live your life. I hope you're happy. I hope you're successful, however you define that. And let's talk about the other 97% of things. And I'm completely fine with that.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Jay. By the way, Jay and other guys in the IC, I should be if anyone I should be pronouncing their names correctly, it should probably be the guys from the Iron Council.
That's true. I'm not gonna argue with you on that.
No, I know. I was hoping you'd give me an out. Like, oh no, it's okay, Kip. You could be mediocre.
Go listen to I don't know. Don't listen to the Order of Man podcast if that's what you're looking for, because It's like the order of mediocrity, the order of complacency. I don't know. There's another podcast out there that would be better suited for that.
Yeah, or just act like you let your human nature take over, and that's just how you'll show up by default.
Yeah.
All right, Jay.
Always worked well.
Trying to be a good man versus just being a good man. Lately, it feels like I'm just checking off the boxes. For a lot of us, at least guys my age, our grandfathers were part of the greatest generation, and we've referenced that generation a few times in the IC. I imagine they didn't have to try to be good men. They just were. I guess there wasn't really much of a question, but I wanted to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I actually had an interesting conversation on another podcast about this very subject just yesterday. And in modern times, you actually have to choose to be a man. 100 years ago, you didn't have to.
It's not forced upon you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100 years ago, you didn't have to, right? You were working the farm, you were working the land, there was more violent encounters, there was wars, and it was just a more difficult, rough time. And so you either became a man or you died. Literally, you died. The elements killed you, you had no food, nobody there to rescue you, so you died. So what was your only option? To die or to step into masculinity and do what men do. But today we've built this incredible society that gives us access to information and access to food unlike we've ever had. We live in climate-controlled buildings. Very rarely do we go outside. The risk of us being in a violent encounter, although maybe it's gone up over the past 3 to 6 months, is greater, but generally speaking, lower than it's ever been. Except for Jay's line of work, he's a police officer, so it's more violent for him. Like he in a way has to choose and volunteer to be a man more so than a lot of people. So knowing that, you have to decide what kind of choice are you going to make. And I know there's hundreds of thousands of men who listen to this podcast. We won't say men, we'll say it this way. There's hundreds of thousands of males that listen to this podcast. Not all of them are men. And sometimes people say, well, man, you have a dick and balls, right? No, that doesn't make you a man. That makes you a male, biologically a male, but being a man is something more. So you have to make that decision to be a man. And unfortunately, a lot of males are choosing not to. But I think it's through difficult times that we realize what we're capable of because we're faced with the adversity, whether that's a violent encounter in Jay's line of work as a police officer, or just with the riots and the looting and everything else that's going on. It could be when your back's up against the wall because your wife is going to leave you, or your business is going to shut down, or you've noticed you're 50 pounds overweight and now you're dealing with a medical condition. Now your back gets pushed up against the wall and you have to decide, are you going to cower and bitch out and moan and cry and hope somebody rescues you? Or are you going to step into the calling of manhood? Are you going to do what is necessary? And I hate to say it, but quite honestly, a lot of us need to be in more difficult circumstances. We need to get punched in the teeth, both literally and figuratively at times. We need to have our backs pushed up against the wall so that we can see what it is we're capable of. Now, I don't want that to be in an uncontrolled environment where I don't have control of the situation, but I think what we can do is thrust ourselves into those situations. We talked about jiu-jitsu earlier. That's a prime example. Some other sort of physical challenge, pushing outside of our comfort zones, doing public speaking, getting into the gym and training our muscles and our bodies every day, resisting some sort of temptation and exerting willpower and developing and building willpower is an important skill set. But ultimately, you have to make the decision. Okay, so right now, what I would ask you guys, if you're listening to this podcast, are you content with being a male and that's it? And if that's it, then go listen to something else that's going to be significantly less threatening to you.
Yeah, this is going to be uncomfortable for you.
Yes,
yeah.
And it should be. So if you've decided, hey, I'm okay, living in mommy and daddy's basement. Look, if you're 20 years old or older and you're living in mommy and daddy's basement and you're listening to this, grow up. Seriously, grow up. Oh, but it's hard. No shit. Welcome to adulthood. Like, grow up, get a job, do what you need to do to be a man. And if you're not willing to do it, then don't call yourself a man. Just say, I'm a male. I'm a male. I'm a male. because that's all you are. Or alternatively, decide that you're going to be a man, thrust yourself into the battle, do difficult, demanding, and challenging things that make you uncomfortable so that you can earn the title. And it is earning it. You have to earn it. So, yeah, the other thing I would say with checking off the boxes, Jay, do less. Do less. I know that sounds really weird in what would be dubbed a self-help podcast. Stop doing so much, guys. Like, we're doing everything. And you think you're going to be good at everything. You're not. Just do less. But that doesn't mean skimp out on work. It means go deep. Like, go like super deep into the doing fewer things, so it doesn't feel some sort of monotonous checking off the box, and it feels like you're completely and fully engaged in whatever it is you're doing. We are spread so thin, and frankly, we just don't have the time and capacity and resources to do everything well. So yeah, there's going to be some things that are just simply checking off the box. That's because you're doing too much. Do less and get really good at those few things. And if you want to say yes to something, then realize, okay, what if I'm saying yes to this, what am I willing to say no to? A lot of guys will ask me, well, why do you do jiu-jitsu? Why not do Muay Thai? And why not do boxing? And will you ever do that? I might do that in the future, but not now. Because if I do that, then that means I won't be able to go as deep into this practice, which is what I'm focused on right now. Because I realize there's a sacrifice and there's a trade-off. So do less, but become hyper efficient with less. You can do more with less.
Yeah. And gratification and fulfillment comes from going deep into things. Otherwise, it's just busy work. It's like a little bit of everything, and you're not going to feel satisfied without a doubt.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Now we're going to jump over to some questions from Facebook. To join us there, facebook.com/group/orderman. Dylan James Green, would you join a revolution to fight tyranny government if one comes? I told my wife I would fight to leave a better world for my boys.
Yeah, I would. If it came to that, if it came to a point where there's tyranny and control, yeah, definitely. And we needed to step up. You know, we had men who were willing to do that 250 years ago, and that's what transformed not only this country but the face of the planet. So yeah, I would, and I would make myself, and have, and will continue to make myself capable in all ways of doing that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you? I think there's gray sometimes for guys in regards to understanding what tyranny looks like. Would you suggest that were clear for us? Well, I could just see in our current state of things where we could end up in that circumstance and not even realize it because we've been slowly conditioned and passive, and before you know it, you're like, I have no freedoms, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's importance of drawing a line in the sand for oneself?
Yeah, I do believe that, because you're exactly right. It's like the frog in boiling water. You know, if you put the frog in cool water and gradually heat it up, it will cook himself to death. If you throw it in a hot pot, it'll just jump right out. And so I think the powers that would be know this, and so they're going to implement these little things strategically and systematically to continue to strip away some of our rights. So one of the things that you hear a lot about now is masks, right? You hear that all the time. And the argument for masks, barring the medical stuff, let's forget about that for a second, is what kind of rights does that strip away? You know, you hear a lot of people, oh, what kind of rights does that strip away, just having to wear a mask? Well, look, if the government can mandate that you wear a mask, can they mandate that you not go anywhere? Drive anywhere? If that's the case, can they not mandate that you can no longer own a vehicle, or you can no longer own property, or that you can no longer work in your chosen field, or that chosen field no longer exists because we're going to legislate it away? I don't think these are difficult conclusions to jump to. Some people might say that's alarmist and it's not going to come to that. Really?
A mask is very personal. In fact, all the examples you gave seem further away than forcing an individual to place something on their face. And if they don't, there's legal action or possible going to jail.
Right. And then you have you have individuals ratting each other out, and different parks and different organizations that are closed, and you can't go to this gym, but you can go to Walmart. Well, why? It's a what's the term they use? I'm drawing a blank right now. It's critical, right? It's a necessity. I can't remember what the term they use right now, but that's what they say. It's like, well, who are you to decide what's necessary for me? What's a crucial business for me? You don't get to decide that. And some people will say, well, this thing would have been crushed by now. Well, look at Sweden. I mean, that's a great example. They didn't lock anything down. Continue schools, no lockdowns, no mask mandate. They had deaths. I'm not saying that. They had their deaths they needed to deal with, but they're on the other end of this thing, and they still have deaths. They still have cases, but it's nowhere near what some of these countries who locked down did. So I think this is a very perfect opportunity for those who would like to insert themselves more into the public realm, private realm, to wrestle some of the control under the guise of safety. It's a very good opportunity. What is the term? Never let a crisis go to waste. It's a very good opportunity to push as far as they can and see how far we'd be willing to go. But I feel a little bit at this point like a little circus monkey performing for other people. It's an interesting thing. Interesting is not the right word. It's worse than that.
Everything. I think we should question everything. Yeah, if a law gets passed for seatbelts and the intention is to save lives, you have to always remember that a little bit of freedom is being taken away.
Well, I don't think seatbelt laws should be on the books, because if you're an adult and you get into a vehicle, same thing with helmet laws. If you ride a motorcycle and you're an idiot and you don't want to wear a helmet, okay, you're an idiot. Hey, natural selection will take its course. That's fine. Or alternatively, you can voluntarily choose. I don't need the government to tell me what I should and shouldn't be doing. If you want to wear a helmet, wear a helmet. I would think that that's a pretty smart idea. If I was going to ride motorcycles, I would personally wear a helmet. But if you don't want to wear a helmet, okay, it's your brain, it's your skull. By all means, So, look, if it's not affecting me, and people say, well, mass, that affects other people. Look, if you're unhealthy, or you have concerns, or you're scared or whatever, that's fine. It's not my responsibility to protect you. It's your responsibility to protect you. Don't go out in public. I went to the convenience store the other day and I got in line, and this woman, the cashier, did not have a mask on, and the woman, it was an elderly woman, she had a mask on, and she yelled at the lady for not having a mask on. And I'm like, what? What is this woman buying? She was buying alcohol and lottery tickets. And so, number one, you got some health issues, obviously, probably, right? And number two, those aren't necessities. Those are luxuries. Because what people say is, well, I have a right to come out here. You do have the right to come out.
At your own risk.
Right. That's your risk. Again, that goes back to what we were saying. Personal accountability and responsibility. These people are so dumb. Ryan, why can't you just help protect people? Because they can take care of themselves, and they have to make those decisions for themselves. I'm not their savior. It's crazy, dude. It's crazy.
And what's interesting is when you have a society or a culture that has a default victim mentality, and then you create this perception of collective as a whole, Ryan, collective as a whole, we will stop and save each other and our health. What does everyone do? They give away their sovereignty, and they hand over the possibility of death by, a pandemic of whatever to everyone else. They immediately become a victim, and they go, okay, well, if I die now, it's because of you.
It's somebody
if
else's
my
fault.
uncle dies, it's because of someone else's fault. It's not because of theirs. And what's ironic, you look at guys like us. If you were at risk, if you're honestly concerned about dying, would you drastically adjust how you've exposed yourself to other individuals? I would. There's no way I'd be going to Chili's.
You would think.
Screw that.
Because that's
I
your
would not
job.
be going to Walmart.
That's your responsibility.
Yeah, like if I was honestly taking accountability for my health and the well-being of my children, we would drastically be adjusting than just wearing a stupid, crappy mask and still doing everything like everything's normal and fine and dandy. I would drastically adjust.
And because you understand personal responsibility. So I'm going to say something that's very unpopular here, okay?
I think we've already
Yeah, well, you have, but this is going to be very, very unpopular, maybe. When I see handicap places at the store or amenities for disabilities, I think that stuff should not be mandated. That should not be mandated. Like, who are you to force me to do something to serve somebody, anybody? Okay, if I as a business owner, for example, choose to make those amenities available, then that's my choice as the business owner. And I would think that if I made those amenities available, I would do it on a case-by-case basis. For example, if I owned a company that sold wheelchairs, I would probably think that I should make a handicap spot available for individuals who might have a greater likelihood of needing that space, or a ramp because they need the space. But if I own a scuba diving company, those people aren't going to go scuba diving, right? Okay, so people can make.
What do you mean those people?
People can make their own decisions. So now you're going to get me in more trouble. They can make their own decisions. And look, if I'm disabled, okay, let's say I'm disabled, and a company doesn't offer me amenities, why the hell would I want to go patronize that store? I wouldn't want to support them if they're not willing to voluntarily offer me some amenities. I don't understand the whole, like, let's just acquiesce to everybody and make everybody feel important and make sure everybody's included. I think people are smart. I think people are generous. I think people are gracious. I think there's certainly an element of the invisible hand. Adam Smith talks about it in The Wealth of Nations, that people will make decisions based on what's good and what's in their heart, but also what's good for their pocketbook. Let people make decisions that are going to serve them and be in their own best interest, and then let other people make the decisions of whether or not they want to patronize these stores. But I also think the same thing about masks, and here's a counterpoint to the masks. Because some people say, well, that store can't force me to wear a mask. Bullshit. I think that store, if that store says you have to wear a mask,
yeah.
I think if they say you have to wear a mask, then you're a dick and an asshole if you don't wear a mask in that store. And if you don't like it, don't shop at that store.
Exactly.
If you go to a
That's
store and they say, I'm sorry, we only allow you to come in if you're completely nude, then you either strip down or you don't shop at that store, because that's their decision. And so what I have a problem with is the same thing with that cake, where the gay couple sued this cake owner because they wanted. I don't care about gay rights or anything else. All I care about in this case is that guy was attempted to be forced to make something he wasn't interested in making. And by the way, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter if it's discriminatory or it doesn't matter if it's homophobia. I think for whatever reason, that guy can decide. And guess what? I get to decide whether or not I patronize him or not. Because you know what? I can just go down the street and get the gay cake or whatever from the other guy who doesn't care. And I'm more than willing to support him in that case than the guy who isn't interested in serving me, right? So I just, the lack of personal accountability, personal responsibility is just, it's disgusting. It's despicable. And I don't need some government telling me what I can and can't do and then protecting you who aren't willing to protect yourself.
Yeah. I was thinking about, and at the root of that is freedom. And it's right. Interesting because I think so many people will give it lip service. Oh yeah, we want freedom. but they don't want the responsibility of it. And they would rather be a victim and in turn give up freedom. Like at turn, everyone's like, yeah, freedom, great. Oh, wait, accountability? Like I have to figure this out for myself. I can't rely on someone else or blame someone else for my well-being or my protection or something else. Well, okay, you know what? I choose safety now. And it's really interesting how we're all so eager to say freedom, but in reality, most people, they don't want freedom. They want safety, right? Yeah. And victimhood.
And I get it. It's tempting, and it's just a path that's not going to lead to the right place.
No. Martin Dennis, what's the best way for a man to culture himself, and what are the benefits of being cultured?
That's an interesting question, to culture himself. Well, I think about culture. I think about being exposed to different experiences, right? That's what culture would be. Like your culture is a collection of your combined experiences, and then we have enough of us that have those same combined experiences, and that's where we create our rituals and our rites of passage and our beliefs and our viewpoints about different things, right? So what's the best way to become cultured? Expose yourself to different cultures. Have an open mind, have an open heart, expose yourself to different cultures, people that believe differently than you, people that think differently than you. I also think cultured has an element, when I hear that, of gentlemanness. Like when I hear cultured, I think maturity, right? He's cultured, he's a gentleman, he's mature, he's been exposed to a lot of information. And then you still make your own decisions, but you do it with the most information at hand. So I say expose yourself to different environments, whether that's different cultures, different hobbies, different activities, things you'd normally say no to, you should maybe say yes to. And that's actually the beauty of the podcast is, for me anyways, is that I've been exposed to people that I agree with, people that I disagree with, people that have been through different experiences and circumstances and yet have overcome and surmounted just incredible odds against them. Just be exposed. That's what I'd say. Expose yourself to as much information as you possibly can. And then make your own decisions based on all the information you have.
And I think that's the key, right? And to be able to make your own decisions means that you understand that it's culture, that it's not like what's right and wrong in one culture is different in another culture, and realize that distinction, right? Like I used to teach young people like gospel doctrine. And this is one of the distinctions that my wife and I would meet because we like pair teached or whatever. And that there's a difference between culture, society culture, church culture, and gospel. And we sometimes blur them and we go, oh, well, that's unacceptable. In one of the examples that I use, and maybe the LDS people will be able to relate to this, but I asked the boys, I'm like, hey, so next Sunday you come and you pass the sacrament and you do it in a skirt. Is that okay? No, that's not okay. You got to have a white shirt and a tie and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, that's not gospel. That's culture.
Sure.
What do you mean?
Of course.
Go to Tonga.
Look at Samoa. Exactly.
Go to New Zealand. Yeah, they're wearing skirts, right? There's a difference between, but in their world, they're thinking, oh, that's gospel, right? And I think we have a tendency to do it with culture. What's right? What's wrong? Understand that some things are just culture, and it's not right or wrong, or it might be, but to your point, I guess I'm giving a longer explanation of the point that you're saying is decide for yourself and understand.
Well, and this is the thing I actually have a problem with when it comes to cultural appropriation, where it's, people aren't, I don't think generally, in some cases maybe, but I don't think generally when somebody decides to wear their hair a certain way or to wear a certain garment that has some cultural meaning, that they're poking or they're mocking other cultures. In fact, if anything, I think they're honoring those other cultures. And I can't imagine necessarily doing this. I don't know that it would be entirely appropriate for like a haole boy like myself to wear a skirt, to the sacrament in Hawaii or Tonga or Samoa. But at the same time, it might be a nod to appreciation and respect for their culture. I don't know in that case. I'm just using that as an example.
Well, but it's when you speak another language in a different country, you're
that's a good
slaughtering
point.
the language. Most natives appreciate that.
Right.
They
'cause
appreciate you're trying.
Right.
Exactly.
That's a better example than I gave for sure. Is like you're honoring that. You're recognizing it. You're acknowledging it. And so that's why I have a hard time in society when we get rid of these sports teams' names that, you know, fewer than 1% of the people feel offended by, or they just generate and manufacture this offense that they don't actually feel, or it's not even directed even remotely towards them. It's like, you know, you take Cleveland Indians or you know, the Cedar City Redmen, right? Washington Redskins. Like, that's not poking fun at, especially with teams like, you want a menacing, strong, intimidating, like, that's not poking fun at that. That's actually honoring the warrior culture that they've created. Like, what is the problem here? You know, I don't know, man. I swear I wasn't meant to live in this time at times I'm like, this is the wrong time. Like, you put me in the wrong century. Everybody's offended about everything.
Totally. All right. Logan Ryan, should I feel guilty about my disgust at all the memes people post regarding some of the current hot topic issues? I just feel that too many people think they are helping solve an issue by posting a meme or a hashtag. And it depends if it's funny, in my opinion. But
lighten up, man. It's a meme. Have fun with it.
Yeah.
That's it. You know, like when people make fun of me, I'm like, yeah, that's actually pretty good. Like, that is kind of like me.
Yeah.
You know,
like the dog, the Ryan Mickler dog is the all-time best meme ever.
I never took offense to that at all. Never, because again, this goes back to what we were saying earlier. It's fun. It's lighthearted. It's a poke. Yes. Is it mean-spirited? No, I don't think it's mean-spirited. I think it's just exaggerating something that kind of seems true, and it's funny. Like, that's it. It's just funny. Yeah. Lighten up.
Most of the time I scroll through social media and I'm just shaking my head because I'm so surprised how witty people are. Like, half the things I'm like, I would have never thought of that. That is so funny. Like, did you see the COVID one? I have a COVID joke, but 99.06% of you won't get it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's hilarious.
And just lighten up.
I'm easily entertained.
But we're in this society right now where it's like we look, comedians, and I'm not a comedian by any stretch of the imagination, but like, we need comedians because we give them permission to say things that we don't give permission to for the 99.9% of the population. And it's kind of like, so my wife, she does canning. Okay, so if you're familiar with the canning and the processing steps or procedures at all, you'll understand this. You fill up the bottles with the water or whatever she puts in there, and then you put the beans or whatever it is, right? And then you put it in the steamer, and then the steamer, as pressure, cooks it, and what it does is it vacuums it and it seals the lid to the can so that you can preserve it. It takes all the air out. And on the top, there's this little release valve. And the little release valve just opens up occasionally, just based on the temperature, and it lets some of the steam out. Because if it wasn't there, it would be a bomb. That's essentially what a bomb would be. Okay, so the release valve, you need to make sure it's working and it's letting some of the steam off. That's what comedy is. Comedy is the release valve. Because if everybody walked around as serious as I am all the time, if everybody was like that, can you imagine the pressure cooker we'd be sitting in? And so we have these comedians who we give permission, and they're the release valve, and we say, okay, you make fun of cancer, okay? Like, nobody else can make fun of cancer, but we'll let you make fun of it just to lighten the mood. Okay, you make fun of and mock 170,000 people dying from COVID. You do that. 99% of people, we're not going to give permission. We're just going to give you a little leeway here to be the release valve, because otherwise we'll all blow up and explode. That's what's happening right now. Yeah. Is everybody's so tight and uptight, and we're canceling comedians, and we're saying you can't be funny and you can't talk about this. And so there's no release valve, and everybody's heads are starting to explode because we can't make fun of each other. So Logan, I think it was saying, should I feel guilty? I think that phrase, should I feel guilty, is actually indicative of the problem. You're taking it too seriously. Oh, should I feel guilty about this? No. You should just read the joke and laugh when appropriate.
Yeah.
The end. And then the other 99.9% of your life, you can be uptight and be upset and be bitter, whatever. And I'm not saying you are. I'm just saying you can be more serious. But it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
Just lighten up. Have some fun.
And give a little grace too, you know, like I'm sure I've said things where I'm not sure. I know I've said things where afterwards I'm like, yeah, maybe took that a little too far, right? Like there's some humanity in us. And sometimes we joke a little too much and then we go, mistake, my bad. And we move on. We don't need to cancel out people so often, you know?
No, I don't think we need to cancel. And I see it on both sides of the political spectrum. I mean, I hear the stupid things that Biden says. I hear the stupid things Trump says, and I'm like, you moron. And I'm like, oh, that's right. He is a moron, just like me. If all of my words were scrutinized to the degree that these two individuals' words were scrutinized, I don't know how well I'd fare or stack up against these two individuals either. Now, some of it, you know, you got to think, okay, maybe that's not excusable. You have to make that decision for yourself. But at the same time, what is it? There's a quote, never attribute to malice what could be attributed to stupidity. And that's like, we're not as malicious, I don't think, as people think. I think we're just dumber than we think, or dumber than we're willing to acknowledge and recognize in ourselves.
Yeah, totally. If you don't mind me sharing one more thing, because I thought this was pretty profound. So I'm reading, I'm pulling it up, man. I'm pulling it up. Hold on. This is a good point. So Dan Crenshaw's book, right? Fortitude.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about, he went on SNL and got and someone dropped a bad joke, right? And they were joking around. Obviously it's SNL. They said something about him being what is it? Like a hitman that's a porn star, you know what I mean? Right. And then the one guy says something about his eye patch and says, oh yeah, he got that in battle. Ha ha ha. And it was like, whoa, you know, that was too far. And he talked about, he had this opportunity to seek retribution. You know, you need to apologize for that. And that was inappropriate. And he chose not to. He chose to have a little bit of fortitude and thought, you know what, that's up to me to decide to be offended or not. Happened. SNL came to their own conclusion that was too far. And what they ended up having him do is inviting him back onto the show during Veterans Day and do a special thing for veterans. And they corrected the problem and did something even better. And he didn't have to counsel him. But imagine if you went with the approach of the cancellation culture and created this huge rift, that other opportunity on SNL wouldn't have happened. And I think far too often, right, we jump to that conclusion of just like, you know, I demand, or you know what, just let it be. And that person, they'll probably have some humanity, and later on they might go, in that moment of my time, I took that a little too far and I shouldn't have, right? Versus you destroying your relationship.
It's a good example, and this is what's indicative of the miserable, weak society that we live, is the worst day of your life is when some random dumbass on Saturday Night Live said something, used words, and it hurt your feel-bads. Like, that's your issue?
Yeah.
Come on. You know, like, okay, so somebody said something mean about you at work, and that's what's got you all bothered? Okay, just go back to work and prove them wrong. Like, there's not... The things that we get upset about is absolutely ridiculous. That's why I don't like the terms like, he verbally attacked me. What the hell does that even mean? He verbally assaulted me. Wait. You realize what assault means, right? Like, have you ever been in a situation where people were actively trying to kill you? Because if you were, you would have a different meaning for the word assault. Because somebody calling you a jerk or making even a racist comment, I wouldn't say is appropriate, but I also wouldn't say a verbal assault on you. The only example I would think that maybe you should say something if they're actively calling for violence against you. Outside of that, lighten up, relax. You're not assaulted.
Well,
somebody just said something mean about you.
And to your point, right? That's how soft we've gotten. It's crazy.
It is, man.
All right, one more question.
Let's take one more. Yeah, let's take one more.
Eric Swanson, do we have a discussion with people with different beliefs, politics, and religion when it seems that history and facts are irrelevant to them? I mean, we've kind of answered this question, but it's not what Eric's looking for. But
let me tie in a bow and say, if they're interested in having a discussion, that's got to be the first barrier, right? Because if they're not interested in learning or growing or expanding, or you're not, like if either one of the parties or both are not interested in changing perspectives or being open-minded, the discussion is not worth having on either side, you or them. Okay, so that's first and foremost. Secondary to that, how do you have a discussion about differences of opinion? You find the common ground. So if we've identified that both parties are actually indeed interested and open to discussion, we want to improve, we want to move forward. I mean, we see this on teams within the corporate world all the time. You have two top-line leaders who are very excited about their proposal. The team's going in the same direction. We want to increase our bottom line, and we want to sell this product, and we want to change lives. And you have two top-line leaders who see something very differently. I think this is the solution, and this other guy thinks this is the path. Okay, well, come to some common agreement. Okay, what is the goal? What is the objective? What do we agree upon? Start with that, and then I think you're going to be able to work through the differences a little bit better. It's that simple, right? So if you're talking about politics and you want more people to have access to housing, one avenue could be government mandated rent control. That's one option. Another option could be loosen restrictions for contractors so they can build more homes. And therefore, because of supply and demand, they become more affordable. That's another option. Another option could be to increase, through government mandate, minimum wage, because now they'll have the money to be able to pay for the housing. Another option could be to offer free college for everybody so they can get higher paying jobs. Look, I'm not saying one is right or wrong right here. I'm just saying here's some options to address this. Okay, well, we all want people to realize the American dream. I think most people would say, I would love for Americans to be able to live out the American dream, part of which is to have some property ownership, to own their own home. We all want that. Okay, now let's look at it and see what is the biggest thing. For example, let's go to the minimum wage issue. Let's look at that. Let's put it on the table. And let's look at this as a potentially viable strategy. What will this do? Okay, well, it's going to increase wages. That sounds good because now people will be able to afford it. But if everybody's rates go up at the same time, that includes contracting rates. So the price of housing goes up relative to the increase in minimum wage. So will that make housing more affordable? No, if anything, in best case scenario, it will, the cost of housing will go up relative to the cost of wages. Okay, well, that's actually going to defeat the purpose. So that's not going to work. Let's table that. Now let's go to the free education. Let's talk about that. And as long as you have the same objective and people are rational and they're willing to look at these things, I think you can have good discussions. If a party becomes irrational or they're not even on the same wavelength as you, okay, well, what conversation could you possibly have that's going to, and that's where we get tripped up with politics. See, I heard this great quote one time, and it said, the key to winning some sort of an election is to get 50% of the people to hate you. And it was said tongue in cheek, but it's actually true. Like, you're actually not trying to convince people to see your side of it. You're trying to polarize people by design so that you're only speaking to 50% of the population. That's it. That's all you want. That's why when we see these, well, there was one in the news, I believe in Wisconsin, there was a black man who was shot by two officers, and I can't remember if just one or both officers fired. I watched the video. Those police officers shot him in the back. He was getting in his car, and they shot him right in the back. I don't think that would be disputed. So we have these politicians now who will jump right into that. This is police brutality. This is race. These are race issues. Actually, we don't know. What we know is that man was shot in the back. It's right there on the video, but we don't know why. We don't know the extenuating circumstances. We don't know the motives yet. We'll figure a lot of that stuff out. But you have these politicians who jump at this. In fact, I think they revel in it, which is despicable and disgusting. But they revel in it. They love it because now they can polarize and then get, like I said earlier, the 50% of people to hate them, which means the other 50 will love them. And that's what they know. And that's what they're doing. So politics isn't about uniting people at all. It never has been. It's about dividing and conquering. And that's what politicians know. And that's exactly what politicians do. So if we believe that our route to success or unity in the United States is found through politicians, it's at direct odds with what they are attempting to do on both sides of the aisle, by the way. Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Conservative, all of it. Polarize, yep. Divide, conquer, divide, conquer. It is in their playbook. That's what they know. That's what they do very, very well.
Yeah. And then we go along and label ourselves with those political groups.
Right.
Which is like the opposite of having critical thought process and finding common ground and understanding on anything.
Right. I mean, when's the last time you had a debate, like a political debate with your neighbor?
A real one?
No, with your neighbor or a coworker. Because that shit doesn't matter. What matters is that your neighbor needs help mowing their lawn because they're hung up because of a medical thing they're dealing with. What matters is that your coworker is struggling to make his deadline on the project because he doesn't have enough resources, and so you want to come in and you want to help. Like, those are the real things that matter. Not, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, so you broke your leg and you can't mow your lawn? Are you a Democrat or Republican? Because based on that answer, I either will or will not mow your lawn. Nobody in their right mind would ever say that. If you know your neighbor, you'd say, you got it. I'll be there tonight at 6 o'clock right after work to go do that. And you wouldn't think twice about Democrat, Republican, nothing. It wouldn't even cross your mind. It's rough. It's rough right now.
Crazy world. All right. To join or to submit your questions in the future for future AMAs, get your questions and join us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/Order of Man. You just shave your head?
It's a little buzz.
Oh, yeah.
It's a little buzz.
Sorry, I got distracted.
That's what I do. My wife cuts my hair. You know, she does an 8 on the top, 2 on the sides. Good to go. Simple.
A little high blend.
Not a pretty boy like you, where you go to the salon and you have your tips frosted and whatever it is you do.
Frosted. Yeah. Well, once I got rid of the mullet, I stopped getting perms at least. So you know what I'm talking.
Totally. Especially in Utah. Yeah, man. Southern Utah. I never had a mullet and I never had a perm, but I saw plenty of perm mullet at a rodeo in my day.
Oh, so funny. To learn more about the Iron Council and to join us there, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. Our Order of Man event is still in the works. That's October 9th through the 11th. To learn more, go to orderofman.com/main event, and that's the state main event. I'm assuming we have a few spots, maybe an official update.
Yeah, I have no official update.
If you really want to come,
it's like 50-50 right now because we've had a lot of individuals who are not all that interested in traveling. So that's part of the deal. And then the insurance is actually proving to be a challenge as well. So I maybe I don't know. We'll see. We'll keep you in the loop as best we can. It's hard.
We'll keep you updated.
Yeah.
Okay. So support the order and kind of what we're doing. Share the message. You could do so by utilizing the resources of this podcast, YouTube channel, or following Mr. Mickler on Instagram or Twitter at Ryan Mickler. And of course, course, supporting by wearing some Order of Man swag. Go to
Did you see Brecken's new
store.orderofman.com.
bike, by the way?
I did. I was a proud,
So
not that
rad.
he got a bike because of me, but I was proud of him. I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah, because you make me
it's
send you
looking
free
bike.
merchandise, so it wasn't anything that.
Yeah. I didn't participate at all. I didn't contribute bike.
I'm telling you, like he saved. So if you guys don't know what we're talking about, is my oldest son is our store manager. So he fulfills all the orders. He's customer service. He does email correspondence with you guys. He checks inventories. Him and I work on ordering new merchandise together, and he has saved for 2 years at this point. And he bought just this weekend bought a brand new bike. It's a dual sport. It's the Yamaha TW200. And we got there. He's only ridden a little Honda 50, not a manual clutch, by the way, just a little automatic.
This is a legit bike. Yeah.
This is a man's bike. It's a beginner bike for sure, but it's a man-sized bike. And so we get there and the guy's like, hey, it's in the service shop. They're putting the lights and stuff on it now. Do you want to check it out? I'm like, yeah, let's go check it out. And I see it. I'm like, oh, bro, I don't know if this is going to work. And I'm like, and I think that, let alone when your mom sees it. So I'm like, well, get on it. And he gets on it, and he's like, he's on his tippy toes. He's actually pretty good height for. He's a big kid anyway.
Because it's a dirt bike. Yeah.
It's a dual sport, so it's a dirt bike, but it's got everything it needs to be on the road as well. So it'll do both.
Yeah.
And man, we got it home, and he's just been scooting around. And it was funny because a couple of the salespeople there are like, hey, are you gonna finance it? How are you gonna pay for it? I'm like, he's paying cash for it. And they're like, what? I'm like, it's his money. Like, he saved for 2 years. All his money. He did the title, the registration, paid the taxes. He bought the helmet, bought the chest protection. He bought it all. And I said, this is you, bud. Like, I'm not buying anything. Like, this is what you've been saving for. And man, he's loved it. So long story short, I just want to say thank you to you guys. And also my son says thank you because he genuinely does. He said if I was going to make a post about it, to make sure I said thank you, because he knows that you guys who have bought hats or a shirt or a battle planner or whatever have supported him in making that little dream of his come true, which is really cool, and he recognizes that. So just wanted to send a thank you from both me and him as well.
That's awesome. I love it when I have a daughter that's she was like, can I skip my birthday and Christmas and I'll save up my own money for a go-kart? Like, she's that type of that type of mentality. I love it when kids do that.
Did she she has a go-kart? Or is she working on it?
She saved up all of her money and bought a go-kart.
She has it. That's
kart.
awesome.
Yeah. Bought her own go-kart. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I love it, man. I love it. All right, guys, we'll wrap things up. I'll be back on Friday for the Friday field notes. And then, of course, next week, keep the questions coming. Keep the comments coming. Keep engaged. Go to the store. Leave a rating and review. Do it all. We need your help in getting this word out. Obviously, we need it. It's a really strange time, to say the least, and your support goes a very long way. So we'll let you go. Until then, go out there, take action, become the man you are meant to be.